Hey, welcome back. My name is Bruce and this is the DIY Homestead Projects channel. This is my 2010 Ford Transit Connect. It has just under 125,000 miles on it, and I'm going to be working on a mini series working on some of the maintenance issues with this vehicle. And in this video I'm going to show you how I replaced the valve cover gaskets on this 2010 Ford Transit Connect. And the way I understand it is this engine is also in a Ford Focus, so depending on the year of your Ford Focus, it might be a similar operation for you. So maybe this video will help you out with that if you have a Ford Focus. Might be kind of a longer video, so I'll include timestamps in the video description of some of the major points in the video, so you can go back and review the parts of the video that interest you and find what you're looking for, hopefully. I changed the spark plugs, and when I changed the spark plugs, the holes down here where those spark plugs are located, I found a bunch of oil in those holes where the plugs are, and that was quite disturbing to me. And I did some more research and found out that the problem is the gasket underneath that valve cover has a rubber gasket below it that seals it off. Well, that gaskets go bad, and it's been leaking for quite a while to fill those spark plug holes with oil. And I purchased a gasket set off of Amazon. There's the part number for you, but I'll put links in the description if you're interested. I think it was like 22 bucks or something for the gasket set. And it's just a rubber set of 4 rubber gaskets that go on the bottom of that valve cover. I want to show you guys how I'm doing this. If you've got this issue with your Ford Transit Connect van or camper van, maybe you'll be able to tackle this one yourself and save yourself probably several $100s. Now, I don't know what a shop charges to do this, but it's going to cost me less than $50 to do this. We're set and ready to get going on this here. First, we got these vent tubes here. I think I can pull little clips and move those out of the way. For this one vacuum hose on the bottom side, connected to the side of the engine, there's a little button. You just squeeze that button and then it pulls off of there. And I think that's the only one I'm going to move out of the way. Just move it back out of here, out of the way. This other one is the fuel line, and I think you need a special tool that I don't have to disconnect it. I think I can work around that, so I'm just going to leave it in place. I'm going to pull these 4 bolts out of here to remove these coils. And this is 8mm. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to unclip all the wires. They just have a button on top, pinch it and pull it off. You can't really get those in the wrong place, just the way they're spaced out. They just fall right where they need to. Set these bolts off to the side, and then we're just going to pull these out. Now, they do have a rubber boot on the bottom. You want to kind of squeeze the base of it. This one came out real easy because I was in here the other day, changed these plugs, but pull that boot out with it. Mine kind of have a little bit of oil on them because that gasket's leaking, so want to clean those up, and I'll clean these all up real good before I put them back in. And I should mention, you should probably wait till your engine is cooled down before you do this, especially before you start pulling spark plugs out and that sort of thing. Now, I'm not going to do that yet till I get that off there and see how wet they are, but I may have to clean them out again. We'll set these off to the side. Now I just have to start unplugging these clips that are all holding this wire harness in place. Now, there's one plug here you want to undo. Again, a little tab on the front, pull it off. They make a special tool, but all I have is a screwdriver to kind of pop these off the tops of those bolts. And try not to break those little plastic keepers. Just pry these off. I'll unplug the injectors too. They're easy enough to get to. There's 4 of them here. little clip, pull them off. That'll give this wire harness more flexibility so I can get it moved out of the way. This clip needs to come undone. Push in on that little tab on the side and that'll come out. All right, this bracket's got to come off there, this metal bracket. Okay, so there you go, about a 1/2 inch long, 3/4 inch. That takes care of the bracket. Now I need to get this one off. It's got a little keeper on this right hand side. Lift up on that and then you can pull that off of there. Kind of move it out of the way. Get that line out of the way. That's pretty close to being good enough. I don't know if I can move this. Oh, I need to unplug this. Just push a screwdriver down the side and push that little tab in that little spot, and then plug comes right out. But it has a little rubber gasket around it that fits down in that plug, so make sure you get make sure it doesn't fall down in there when you take that out. Mine was laying down there by the spark plugs, and otherwise I didn't even know it existed. Now you want to make sure this is cleaned off. There's not a lot of rocks and debris and that sort of thing down in here. You can blow that off with an air compressor before you start. Mine wasn't too awful bad. Nothing's loose there that's going to fall down into the engine once I get this valve cover off. So now I've got 14 8mm bolts that hold this on there. So I'm going to go ahead and take my 8mm socket. Looks like I need a long socket because it's going all the way down over that bolt, and then loosen all those and I can pry that off of there. All right, that's pretty straightforward. Some are a little trickier to get to than others and just have a couple different extensions, lengths, just so you can get in there and get to them. Oh, I got one more here to get. But then you just want to kind of get all of the wires out of the way the best that you can. I need to clean this up. It's soaked with oil. So you can get them out of the way. To be able to get a screwdriver or something under the edge or the corner of the valve cover and pry it up. Pop it loose and then it should come out. Let me get that last one out of there. Now once you've got all the bolts out of there, we just need to pop a corner loose without breaking it because it is plastic, and just try to get it started and then it should come right up off of there. Yeah, I can kind of get up underneath this front corner here, kind of get it started. There we go. Just so I can get that screwdriver underneath there just a little ways and pry on it. There we are. So let me bring you in a little closer and I'll show you a couple of things about the top of this. Now there's around that hole, this center one covers 2 of them, and then the 4th right there, and the gasket, the replaceable gasket, is still stuck. It came out of the top of the valve cover. That's what we're going to replace. There's 3 in the middle and 1 big one that goes all the way around. So now you just want to carefully clean the surface where the gasket sits, all around the edge, around those holes, and on the corners here, you're a little spot of some liquid gasket that needs to be scraped off of there with a razor blade, but don't drop it in the engine. Put something around here to keep it from going in the engine. Scrape that off and get that all cleaned up and smoothed up. This is only on this one end by the chain. Another one back here. You can see this large gasket has already started coming out. Now there are two little bumps that are locator bumps, so you know where the new gasket fits on this end where the chain goes. Little bump there and a little bump there, and you'll see it you'll notice it when you see it. It's a little wider, and there's a little recess or a cutout on the case. Anyway, just get yourself a little screwdriver or something underneath there and start prying it out and make sure it comes out in one piece. If it doesn't, pick the pieces out so you've got that all cleared out where the gasket sits. There's other sections too, like where it goes around these bolt holes, you'll have a little bit of a round spot in the gasket, so you know you're getting it in there in the right position. Those two locator marks, and then all of the rest of them should line up. The small kind of triangular rounded corner one came out of this spot already. There's one here in the center. This is probably the one that was leaking the worst, it looks like, on my Ford Transit Connect. And then we've got another one over here on this corner. So there's a total of 4. 2 of these square ones with a rounded corner, a center one here, and then a perimeter one. I'm going to set these off to the side, take some brake cleaner and a rag and get this cleaned up, and then we'll be ready to put the new gaskets in. This is the kit that I got, gasket set. And it's just a matter of pushing it in here and getting it arranged properly. So let's start with this big one. And I'll look for those locator tabs. See if I can give you a better look at it. All right, here's one right here. It's kind of a wide spot. And the other one was close to that. Over here. So those go in here like this. And you just want to make sure you don't get it twisted. So let's start with this one. That's inside out. So line it up in that spot. Make sure the other holes line up. That's not right. So this must be this side. That's better. Just feed it down into that track. I did, by the way, clean that track out just to make sure there was no debris or old gasket material in there. That locator tab lines up. That bolt hole lines up. And then just work your way around making sure that it fits everywhere, and it should if you've got those two lined up. Just push it down in that groove. Don't get a twist in it. And that's it. Then I just going to go around and double check that I have it fully inserted, pressed down into the groove all the way around. Just like that. And we've got this square one for the center, a rectangular, and it's got a looped corner that goes right by this bolt hole. So I just personally just start it right there and work your way around just like the other one. This corner one has a loophole for the bolt. And then the last one is just a triangle piece. Just make sure you've got it on there properly, with the rounded corner where it goes, and the rest will fall in place where it should be. And once you've got those all pressed into place, we're ready to go over and do a little more prep before we set this back on. And then on the corners, I'll show you when we get over to the van where we need to put a couple of daubs of sealant. And this is the sealant that I got. I'll put links for the gasket kit and the sealant in the video description if you want to do this on your Ford Transit Connect. But this is ultra black gasket maker oil resistant. Now I did go around and clean all the debris and cleaned all the oil off of the surfaces where these gaskets mate. And I also went around with a rag with some brake cleaner and cleaned them off. We scraped off that rubber gasket sealant that was on there before. And we'll just put 2 dime-sized daubs of this gasket material right in those locations. And I'll show you, there's a little seam where the 2 pieces of metal join there, and you want to put about a dime-sized daub on each side. And then we'll set this back on and tighten everything down. Now, if you get down in here and you've got oil in these spark plug holes here, this is what I was doing, replacing spark plugs, when I discovered that I had this gasket problem. And this one on the driver's side was completely full of oil. So I just took a rag and a screwdriver and tucked it down in there, soaked up as much of that oil as I possibly could until I could actually see the spark plug. And then I could get my spark plug wrench on it and pull the plug out. And then took a rag and cleaned it the best I could. A good clean rag, because you don't want anything going down in that cylinder head. Clean it out real good before you pull the plug out, then pull the plug out and clean it out again. And you might get a few drops of oil go down in there, but it'll burn off when you start it up. And then when you replace the spark plugs, if you do decide to do that, I'll put the spark plugs I got in the description. And also you want to get some of this Permatex anti-seize lubricant for these spark plug threads so that these don't seize up. This is an aluminum head on this engine, and it's pretty important that you use something like this on the threads. And then just put you a streak on your plug threads, out like that. Don't get it up here on the electrode, just on the threads. And then when you screw that back in there, it'll spread it around on the threads and keep it from seizing in the engine if you ever have to replace the plugs or pull them out again. And then put them in there and get those threads started just by hand using your fingers before you put the ratchet on it, so you don't strip out those threads in the head. And then once you get it down in there, you're ready to go ahead and torque them down. I'm going to do the rest of these before we put that valve cover back on there. Everything's cleaned up. Got the spark plug holes all cleaned up. Now if you look at the chain side or the passenger side, you can see a little gap here where this case bolts to the engine. There's a gap, or not a gap, but a seam. And that's where we're going to put a daub of this ultra black gasket maker. Again, link in the description. And there's one here, and then on the other side, just off the screen, up next to the cab side. Just going to put a daub like that. I need to spread that a little bit with a screwdriver. And that'll squish out and seal that corner when I put the valve cover back on. All right, so we've got this one, and then right back here, another glob right there, just covering that seam. Now the trick's going to be getting that valve cover set down on top of those without smearing them around, so I'm going to be really paying attention to that while I'm trying to navigate around these wires. Valve cover with the new gaskets. Oh yeah, no problem. Set that right down on top of that goop. Give it a little bit of wiggle, and then I'll tighten all these bolts down. I'm just going to tighten them all down, and then I need to come back and torque them. And there's a torque sequence, and they should be 89 inch-pounds. Now, I don't own a torque wrench because I don't wrench on vehicles very often, but I picked this up from the Loan-A-Tool program at AutoZone. Basically, you just pay for it, take it and use it. When you bring it back, you get your money back. I just need to get those all basically finger tight, and then I'm going to come back and torque them. If you want to take a screenshot of that, 89 inch-pounds, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So that's your torque sequence. Okay, we're all set up, 89 inch-pounds, and then we'll just go through the sequence. All right, sequence one more time just to double check once they're all tight. All torqued down. Next, I'm going to clean up these boots, start getting these wires tucked back in. And once you get the coils all cleaned up, right here in the end, you want to just put a daub of dielectric grease. I'll put a link to this in the description. So I'm just going to put a little daub on my screwdriver and then just put it right in that hole. That way when that slips over the top of that spark plug, it coats it with the dielectric grease and prevents corrosion. Ready to go back on. So these just simply drop down in there, straight down, and line up the hole for the bolt, and it'll go right over the top of that spark plug and seat like it should with that dielectric grease, and we'll get them bolted back down. And plug them all back in. And one last hose to connect. And there we go, we're done. Fire it up, and hopefully we can keep those spark plug holes free of oil now. For like, I don't know, around close to $50. Took me several hours, but that's how we do it. Next I'm going to be showing you guys how to switch out this air box hose and the air filter. I'll do one video on that piece and include the parts like I did in this one and linked in the description. And then I'm going to flush and refill the power steering fluid. Mine's pretty black. It's a little bit low and it's really dirty. So I'm going to switch it out and flush it out, and I'll show you how to do that in another video. But that's how you do the valve cover gasket on this 2010 to 2014 Ford Transit Connect. Click the link on the screen for another video on my series of how to maintain common maintenance issues with a 2010 to 2014 Ford Transit Connect. We'll see you over there.